This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Ash, and Team Valor. Eyes locked on each other, Ash and Paul prepare to start their match, both well aware that this time they are battling for more than just pride, but instead to see whose ideology is truly the right one. Meanwhile, Aaron hastily declares that he'll act as their referee, both because he's invested in the outcome, but also because he wants to make sure that things stay tame enough that the boys don't ruin this place in their feud, as above all else, it is the home of the local bug types, and he will not betray the trust they have placed in him by allowing him to use it as his training ground. Tentatively, Reggie asks if perhaps he should ref, as Aaron is openly in favor of Ash's way. Though good-naturedly, the green-haired man promises to be completely impartial, since regardless of the outcome, his goal is to teach Paul the same hard lesson he learned in as soft a way as he can. And what's more, this way Reggie is free to watch and tend to any injuries in case of emergency, without having to worry about postponing the battle. Not to mention he's still got that egg to look after. As both Ash and Paul are eager to begin, there is no banter or trading of barbs, with the only words they share being centered around the logistics of the battle, such as the number of Pokemon they'll use and the match format. In this regard, Ash does not refuse any demand Paul makes, as no matter what his twin tries to skew in his favor, he has faith that he and his Pokemon are more than capable of rising to the challenge. Ultimately, it's decided that even though both Ash and Paul have 3 Pokemon that are tired from prior battles of the day, they want a full 6-on-6 battle for this rematch, with them asking Reggie to fix up their teams as best he can for the moment, so they're at least fit for a new challenge, and healed of their poisonings in Ash's case. With things all set, the boys take up positions on opposite sides of an area Aaron designates as the battlefield, far enough away from the trees that most of the bug types are resting in. As the technical challenger by proxy of Ash, Aaron gives Paul the option to take the advantage and choose second, though considering the root of his recent issues, he instead takes the lead, and as Ash suspected, goes with Miss Magus as his first. Grimacing, Ash reflects that he still hasn't thought up a strategy to counter Paul's killer combo, though refusing to lose hope as he needs to win not only for himself but for Paul's sake, he decides to do what he does best and go with his gut. As a result, his first choice is Luxray, whose Intimidate ability is rather plainly wasted on Miss Magus, something which Paul all too tersely comments on, evidently not respecting this choice, when he knows his brother is a normal type who can hit his ghost type and avoid a great deal of its moves in return. In fact, it is such an odd choice that Paul can't help but wonder if his idiot brother is attempting some sort of feint, and so refusing to give Ash the satisfaction, he instantly changes out to Groddle to resist the electric type and disable any plans Ash may be cooking up, immediately ready to call for a toxic the moment Paul's thought is abruptly cut off as Ash recalls Luxray in favor of Piplup, with the starter clearly being fired up to take on its rival, despite both an evolutionary and type disadvantage. This time, Paul keenly recognizes this feeling as the same one he got when Maylene began to rally despite the odds against her, but why that is the case currently while Ash is blatantly making bad choices bewilders him more, forcing him to test his brother's strategy by swapping once again to Chimchar, who like clockwork triggers another swap on Ash's part to Elekid for some reason, with him giving up yet another advantage and not making the obvious choice for victory, which would be to swap to something like his Graveler. Hiding his irritation, Paul asks his idiotic brother what he's playing at, and Ash confidently declares that right now he feels super connected to each of his Pokemon like never before, and he knows despite the odds, each of them has a perfect matchup and a way to counter Paul's team for this battle, so he's prepared to chase Paul down and force him into the matchups he can feel in his heart are right. Offset by both how stupidly sentimental this is, and the fact a very, very tiny part of his brain twinges at the concept of this mumbo-jumbo for some reason, Paul finally agrees, going back to the top of the round with Miss Magus, and bringing Luxray back out, so Paul can deal with the devil he knows, and what he views as Ash's overwhelmingly most powerful Pokemon. Meanwhile, from the sidelines, Reggie nurses something seemingly in response to this decision, a slight stirring in the incubator of Ash's egg. Finally, the battle begins in earnest, as Paul calls for a mean look, and refusing to have a repeat of Maylene or Aaron, he also instructs his ghost type to disappear temporarily, and try to surprise the big cat with hypnosis. In response, Ash asks his first catch to start running around the battlefield to throw Miss Magus off, making it so that when the ghost type appears to go for its move, Luxray is able to close in on it, forcing it to either risk a bite in order to get off its attack or dodge. Ruthless as ever, Paul chooses the first option, deeming the damage worth it to put Luxray to sleep, though here he gets lucky, as Luxray misjudges the distance between itself and Miss Magus, and so finds itself in point-blank range for the psychic technique, which leaves it not only asleep, but vulnerable to a follow-up Dream Eater. However, before Paul can think to switch, Ash's luck rises to meet his, with Luxray waking up suddenly and re-engaging its lunge to bite, resulting in it dealing the first damage, much to Paul's anger. Spitefully, he then orders his ghostly mage to employ its Perish song, which it wails out in a more sadistic and spine-chilling tone than usual, only for Ash to do what he does best, and devise a strategy on the fly, having Luxray roar at the top of its lungs to drown out the song, even going as far as to bellow in unison with his Pokemon, while furiously stomping around and flapping his arms and hat to make as much noise as possible, while his Lion Lynx does the same. game. Deeming this stupid as it could never actually work, Paul angrily tries to yell over them that it's useless, though to his shock, neither his voice nor Miss Magis's are enough to speak over these loudmouths. To make matters worse, this frenzied howling and stomping from Luxray also seems to awaken a new vista of power inside it, as all the kinetic energy it's produced needs an outlet, which sees it learn a new move as a necessity, Discharge, as a massive dome of electricity explodes from it with a mighty rumble. Sadly, this does singe the grass beneath it as well as tearing up some of the ground of Aaron's secret training grotto, but more importantly, it washes over Miss Magis, making it writhe in pain as paralysis takes hold. This in turn leaves it vulnerable to a charging bite. Though tough as ever, Paul decides to sacrifice his weakened Pokemon for the sake of still executing his strategy, as he realizes before Ash that the Perish Song countdown is still indeed above Luxray, and so next calls for Hypnosis, as Miss Magis is too slow to attempt any evasive maneuvers. As expected, this sees the Ghost type fall to the Dark move, as Luxray's jaws rend through its ethereal body a final time, but even still, Paul does not miss a beat, bringing out Stantler next to use Nightmare and finish the combo off. However, here Ash stops him, recalling his tired Luxray and thanking it for doing a great job, as he'd rather not make it suffer nightmares just for a battle, a decision Aaron declares as a forfeit, tying things up at 5-all. As they move into the next round, Paul instructs his brother not to get smug over a dumb fluke win, since his plan to counter Perish Song failed. But stubborn as ever, Ash retorts that even so, because he used a skill of Luxray's that has nothing to do with how strong it is, but instead who and what it is, he was able to discover a brand new power alongside it, and get that much stronger. Coldly, Paul calls this drivel, but refusing to back down, Ash insists that unlike Paul, he knows his Pokemon and respects them for the individuals they are, not just their moves and power. After all, they're living creatures with all kinds of quirks and specialities that exist for more than just battling, like a Luxray's Roar, or a Drapion's Tail Claw, all of which can be used to tap into a Pokemon's true potential. It's something Reggie taught them a long time ago, but which Paul has forgotten in his rush to acquire raw strength, and no Pokemon can help hammer that home more than this one, Ponyta. And so Ash's own Hoove team member takes to the field, though not before running back to him for nuzzles and pets, which only angers Paul more as he hurries Ash back to the battle, since he's done enough preaching and procrastinating his loss. Once the young fire type is in position, Paul starts off strong with Psy-Shield Bash, knowing Ash will meet this with Flame Charge, though by the nature of Stantler's attack, this is far less effective, with Ponyta having a great deal of trouble even breaking through the psychic barrier to make contact, though it does enjoy a speed boost, just as Stantler does one to its defense. Wanting to give it another shot, Ash orders another Flame Charge, eager to speed up to the max, while Paul simply calls for Hypnosis, which Ponyta is forced to close its eyes to avoid, only for it to continue its charge and thus be left open to Paul's signature counter snare, this time performed with a second Psy-Shield Bash that slams into the unprepared pony for critical damage and sends it skidding backwards while Ash calls out in worry. Testily, Paul asserts that his concern for his Pokemon rather than victory is what caused that opening. His mindset has made him and his Pokemon weak, just like Reggie's did. That's why Paul won't allow himself to be soft-hearted like Aaron or Ash, or any other loser who tells him he's wrong for just being logical about his approach to things. His Pokemon are strong because they have no other choice but to be, with his Stantler serving as a prime example. Once it was on the chopping block, but instead of accepting mediocrity, it gritted its teeth and proved its worth by attaining results. Being in complete agreement with its trainer, Stantler's resolve rises to the occasion, matching Paul's ambition, as whatever cryptic requirement for the Deer's Lost evolution has seemingly been achieved, with it suddenly glowing with a powerful, almost primordial evolutionary light that bursts away to reveal the creature now larger and more majestic than ever, sporting new crown-like horns and a sagely silver coat. Though as one of Paul's Pokemon, it is of course also sporting his disdainful scowl, making it far more intimidating than it is likely meant to be. While from the side, Reggie expresses shock to see a Weirdeer in this day and age, outside of a museum, or some sort of special preserve. Feeling the power emanating from Weirdeer, Ponyta hastily climbs back to its hooves while Ash shields his face, since a fair bit of dust was kicked up from the latent psychic power awakening that came from this evolution. This presence is something Ash can tangibly feel, as if that pressure Paul is always giving off is now weighing down on him as well, but even still, neither he nor Ponyta are running, as he tells the current youngest member of his team to stand proud and let its fighting spirit flare up with another Flame Charge. Winning in agreement, Ponyta's mane and tail flare in response to its trainer's call, before the fire foal bursts forward with incredible speed, it leaves burnt hoof prints in the grass, and a slight afterimage thanks to its speed and the heat miraging the air around it. Though it's predictable, Paul wants to see Weirdeer's new power on full display, with it reacting to this desire almost quicker than he can speak, with it channeling a full power Psy-Shield Bash, causing the barrier around its body this time to be nearly 3 times what it could generate as a Stantler, and thus an impenetrable fortress for Ponyta to once again slam needlessly into. Nonetheless, Ash quickly rallies with a new split-second harebrained plan, telling Ponyta to cancel that flame charge and begin a new one in the opposite direction. Though being a young and inexperienced Pokemon, the shock of this order causes the fire type to stumble and skid dangerously close to Weirdeer's attack. Thankfully, having gained speed with each consecutive use of the move, it is fast enough to remedy this mistake before it can prove costly, with its confidence growing 10 times as Weirdeer's attack misses by a mile, and it's only the warm air Ponyta left in its wake, thus opening the normal Psychic type to be slammed into from the flank. This boost of speed also allows a secondary attack to be added on, and owing to burn out Ponyta's stamina, Ash decides to keep it simple with the tackle. However, like Luxray, Ponyta responds by rising above and beyond the challenge, as its tackle is leveled up into Takedown, which the little pony performs at full speed, driving its hooves into the grass to keep pressing Weirdeer until enough force is built up to send it skidding back, even if only a bit. Winning triumphantly, Ponyta flicks its mane with joy, while Adrenaline along with praise from Ash dulls the pain of the recoil damage, allowing it to come round for another combo, bucking fiercely and kicking both back hooves out to the same spot again for a powerful stomp. However, now with far more bulk on top of its vastly increased defenses, Weirdeer barely seems to feel this, instead tanking the hit and retaliating with a close-range Hypnosis, which Ash and Ponyta meet just as quickly with an Ember. As a result, both attacks land in unison, with Weirdeer writhing as the hot fireball hits it directly in the snout, while Ponyta unfortunately is caught and put to sleep. Disregarding his newly evolved powerhouse's pain, Paul orders the Majestic Menace to finish Ponyta off with Nightmare, and so an eerie glow emanates from Weirdeer's antlers before surrounding Ponyta and causing it to suffer bad dreams and further gradual damage while it's left vulnerable. Seeing a chance to end things with a final Psy-Short bash, Paul gives the order, though to his consternation, Ash once again forfeits before his Pokemon can actually be knocked out by Paul's, and just as with Luxray, Ponyta is praised for doing an amazing job despite being declared the loser. The elder twin wants to scoff at this sentimental drivel, since he's finally achieved a lead, but to his dismay, before he can, Weirdeer writhes with pain as flames engulf it for a moment, revealing that in his haste to dismiss his partner's pain, he failed to notice Weirdeer suffered a burn, putting it on a clock and halving the effectiveness of half its moveset. Paul is of course upset by this, and though Ash, Reggie and Aaron all suggest he simply call Weirdeer back for the rest of the battle, as it's performed more than admirably, both trainer and Pokemon are resolute that they will spend the very last dregs of its stamina pushing towards a victory in this upcoming battle. Telling Paul to have it his way, Ash then calls forth Graveler as his third choice, encouraging it to keep giving its best, since it's already had a tough battle earlier that day, so this time they are for sure going to break their limits and master its power as a Graveler. Loyally, the big rock roars out a rumbling cheer of agreement as it squares off with Weirdeer, while from the sidelines, Aaron calls for the battle to resume. Knowing physical attacks would be even less effective now, Paul goes directly for Hypnosis, but after all it's done, Weirdeer is exhausted, having burned enough of its increased power that Graveler is able to avoid falling asleep, and simply retaliates with a smackdown that sends a rock hurtling to slam into Weirdeer and drive it back. Even though its psychically boosted defenses absorb most of the damage from this blow, what it can't absorb is the flaming pain of its burn, however, and so finally, Paul's newly evolved Pokemon falls forward, tying the brothers up at 4 Pokemon each. Knowing Ash would swap into Piplup if he tried to use Grottle's 4 times effectiveness against Graveler, Paul can't help but scowl, as he's tired of playing his brother's foolish game, but all the same he stays his hand, remembering that his pride is on the line, and in the end, he wants to crush this stupid strategy along with his ideology, so to that end, he forces himself to think with Ash logic for a moment, surmising Graveler's intended dance partner, and so calls out Scyther. In response, Ash leaves his rock type on the field, confirming Paul's theory, but also making him scowl deeper. Great. Now the dopes decided to take advantage of type effectiveness. Right off the bat, Paul knows Scyther's speed will be its greatest weapon, and so immediately calls for agility to avoid another smackdown, followed by another, having decided to adapt Ponyta's flame charge strategy for his own purposes. Then, when he is confident Scyther is fast enough, he has it switch to acrobatics to avoid the incoming smackdowns, and Fury Cutter to slice through them and build up its power, turning all Graveler's slow attempts to ground the bug flying type into opportunities for it to sharpen its blades. Even Aaron is impressed at just how quickly Paul came up with a similar off-the-wall strategy to Ash's to deal with a distinct disadvantage, as now when Scyther closes in and uses the supercharged Fury Cutter on Graveler, it's able to gouge noticeably into its rocky hide, while its speed is so great that it simply negates any attempts to counter at close range, by darting around speedily and layering on more Fury Cutters to quickly power the move up to its maximum, at which point Scyther's blades glow visibly with a pale green energy, and even extend past their usual size. Thankfully, Graveler's resistance, durability, and endurance hasn't failed Ash yet, and so putting his trust in his Pokemon, he tells it to use Rollout as hard as it can in place, with this at first leaving the big target more vulnerable for further Fury Cutters. However, to Paul's surprise, this spinning actually makes it harder to land the slashing attacks as anything more than glancing blows, and more importantly, it briefly causes Scyther to stagger as the force of the spin repels it, leaving it wide open for Graveler to launch the quad-effective rollout right onto it, knocking it further back and allowing the rock type to come in for another pass. Seeing this, Paul prepares to order evasive maneuvers, but then his keen eyes take notice of Scyther's fighting spirit, which is not wavered in the slightest, with this being reflected in the energy coating its blades, changing from that bright bug green to the distinct orangish brown of the fighting type. Acting on a hunch, he instead roars for the bug to unleash a Brick Break, with Scyther following through to deliver the attack just as Graveler comes in for its second pass. In a flash, an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, and as is the way with such things, the only possible outcome is stalemate, with this culminating in the first official double knockout of the battle. Despite this meaning they remain neck and neck, Paul is infuriated that he's undeniably being matched tit for tat by Ash, who cheers that Graveler did a great job and they're definitely getting the hang of things since the battle felt more like it did back when it was a Geodude. This statement, though not at all pointed, for some reason reminds Paul of his own Geodude that he left behind, and knowing by process of elimination that his next choice will elicit similar memories, he calls on Fearow to stand by for battle. As expected, Ash's choice is his former flying-type Staravia, who of course is more than fired up to finally get the chance to prove itself once and for all. With the fourth round underway, both flying types square off in the air, but immediately it is Ashes that takes the advantage, as Staravia too shares the Intimidate ability, and so Fearow loses a bit of attack potency before the first exchange is even had, which with both boys on the same competitive wavelength is a shared aerial ace, as both flyers coat themselves in the unerring energy of the flying type before coming in to clash. However, even with the attack drop, Fearow still boasts the larger and stronger body, allowing it to push through Staravia's charge, and as it does, Paul lays on the damage by calling for a Fury attack, which sees Staravia peppered with a further hail of pecks from that long spear-like beak. To make matters worse for Ash, several of these are seemingly critical hits, with added power thanks to Fearow's sniper ability, giving the boy little choice but to urge Staravia to hang tough and get its bearings back. However, Paul doesn't mean to give his ex-team member any openings, and so uses the small gap to call for focus energy, increasing the chances of critical hits, before ordering a combo of both Aerial Ace and Fury attack, the first move being used to close in on the opponent and circle around to its blind spot, and the second being used to deliver what Paul is sure will be a match-ending blow. However, wanting to counterattack rather than just take the hit, Ash calls for an Aerial Ace of his own, though this just earns him and Staravia derision, as Paul asks if his idiot brother's already forgotten, when their Aerial Aces go head to head, he wins. Talk about a pathetic strategy. However, this is perhaps just the wrong thing to say, as in response to this scorn, the energy surrounding Staravia transforms from whipping winds into a blue flame, with Reggie's eyes widening in recognition and pride in his brother as he tries to call out for Ash, only to be stopped as the boy states that he knows, before ordering a Brave Bird. Taking off like a jet, the Starling Pokemon then performs its own aerial maneuver, as the flames around its body change to a flaring red just before it and Fearow's attacks crash head-on once again, creating a small explosion in their wake. As a result, the outcome is another double knockout that sees the rival birds tying, though due to the nasty angle and appearance of the crash, Reggie insists on giving both Pokemon a quick checkup before they're returned. Thankfully, it seems their injuries are nothing a well-earned rest and a quick visit to Nurse Joy can't fix, though Fearow has suffered a sprain to its wing, and that may keep it grounded for a while. Huffing at this inconvenience to himself rather than his poor Pokemon, Paul simply returns it and grumbles that he's beginning to question its value to this team, a claim that Staravia takes great offense to, as despite Fearow having replaced it on Paul's team, it cannot help but feel sympathy for the other bird, as once again nothing is good enough for Paul. This passion pushes Staravia beyond a final mental block neither it nor Ash had really recognized it had, as it finally accepts that it is truly done with Paul, viewing him as a lost cause, and thus it can now focus on its and Ash's ambitions, instead of worrying about what he thinks anymore. This new resolve manifests as an evolutionary light, as the little bird once desperate for recognition now stakes a direct and earned claim to it, as it releases a mighty core in celebration of becoming a Staraptor, while Ash just as eagerly joins it. Growling at Ash to return that loser bird and get back to the battle, Paul finally lets his anger show as he releases Chimchar, who is obviously very unnerved by its trainer's frazzled state. Paradoxically, Ash seems more calm now than ever, having found a rhythm and some assurance in his course is the correct one, as he does just that and returns Staraptor for a well-deserved rest. He then coolly informs Paul that he's missing the point of this battle entirely. Staraptor is the second biggest symbol there is that Paul's way of doing things is dead wrong, with the little bird having proved his evaluation of it incorrect since the moment he released it. Yet still his brother refuses to recognize and learn from that, adding that for a smart guy who knows how to adapt, he's pretty dumb when it comes to this. This statement is immensely irritating, but something about it is too interesting to skip over, and so Paul demands to know what the first symbol is, to which Ash responds without missing a beat that it's the Pokemon he just chose, of course, while producing his own choice to meet the fire type in Elekid. He then makes a chilling prediction as to how he'll prove this claim. He and Elekid will defeat Chimchar without taking a single hit. That tears it. Paul will not tolerate any more of his brother thinking they are somehow equals, with him being pleased to see that Ash's insinuation that his weak has awakened a raging Chimchar, with it quickly falling in step with Paul's aggressive strategy, as they go for a volley of embers to take the advantage through long-range combat. However, Ash and Elekid have their answer to this already, as using Brick Break on the ground is enough to cause a burst of dirt, grass, and rocks to fly up and snuff out the embers. Refusing to give up, Paul next calls for a dig, but just when the little fire monkey tries to surface and land the super effective attack, Ash calls for a protect, as a glowing dome appears around Elekid just in time to completely negate this move, while also leaving Chimchar's head exposed for a counterattack, as Ash orders Elekid to smack Chimchar back down the hole with a full power Thunder Punch. All too eager to obey this command, the Sparkplug Pokemon begins spinning its arms until they both crack with electricity, before finally slamming them down atop Chimchar's head for a critical hit that sends it tumbling painfully down its own tunnel. Over with Paul, he is both stunned and horrified at the seeming accuracy of Ash's prediction, with this causing him to begin losing his sense for strategy, in favor of yelling at Chimchar to get back up and activate Blaze right this instant. After a short pause, his wish is granted, as the air around the forest noticeably heats up, enough that more than a few bug types nearby deem the area unsuitable to rest in, and quickly depart, as Chimchar shoots back up, with its tail flame burning furiously at twice the size of the simian itself. Evidently, Ash had expected this, as well as Chimchar and Paul's plan to use a blaze-powered flamethrower, with him promptly nipping this in the bud by calling for thunder. Though it is usually a fairly inaccurate attack, this time Elekid's thunder has little trouble honing in and striking true on the giant ball of fire coating Chimchar, leaving it helpless as it is engulfed by the powerful bolt of electricity, and thus soundly defeated without landing a single hit, just as Ash had said. Despite his win, Ash does not smile here, instead looking sternly at his brother, as he asserts that he told Paul this would happen. The way he treats Chimchar is both the most deplorable and predictable of all his Pokemon, so by now he knows exactly when and how Chimchar will snap, better even than Paul does, and more importantly, how to stop it before it can hurt itself or someone else, like its trainer should. Beyond talking now, Paul aims to finish this, roaring for his brother to shut up and fight, as he produces Grotle next, ready to battle even with the 2-1 deficit. But to his even greater irritation, Ash and that smug little Elekid decide to antagonize him further by declaring that Elekid's done its job, and so will be surrendering its spot, since there's only one Pokemon who deserves to go head-to-head with Paul's starter, and that's Piplup. And so this ideological rematch of brothers and rivals comes down to its final matchup, as Grotle and Piplup take to the field with a shared intensity, both having anticipated this since the start of the battle. This moment of gravity works in Paul's favour, giving him a bit of time to take a few deep breaths and calm down, regaining some sense of scope, and recognizing he's been playing directly into Ash's hands, a mistake he will not make again. Wanting to start off with a move that can ruin Ash and Piplup's foundation, Paul goes for Toxic, but just as quickly, Piplup is ordered to counter this by unleashing a bubble beam into the ground, so the nasty glob of toxic Grotle tries to spit is swallowed up by a burst of mud, like Chimchar's Ember had been. However, still set on keeping the offense, Paul turns this to his advantage, as with the Penguin's vision obscured, Grotle's Razor Leaf is given ample time and room to be sent flying for super effective damage, with Piplup dodging the barrage just in time thanks to Ash's an extra set of eyes and its small size allowing it to dive out of the way. Though as soon as it does, Paul and Grotle are on it, revealing both opening long-range attacks to be part of the setup for another counter-snare, as Grotle pounces on Piplup, grabbing it with Bite and pinning it down, while simultaneously, the bushes on its back glow as they produce a green light that engulfs the water type for a moment, only to return to Grotle as the energy-sapping power of Absorb. Ruthlessly, Paul cries out over Piplup's squeals of pain, as he orders Grotle to keep the onslaught up until it's over, even commanding it to go for Toxic again, though as it rears back and gathers the poison in its maw, Piplup's struggle bears fruit, as a peck to the face causes the Toxic attack to fail, and make room and moisture to allow Piplup to slip out and regain some distance. However, this just results in more Razor Leaves being fired at it once again, as Paul tries to set up another counter snare, slowly but surely backing his brother into a corner, and giving him and Piplup no choice but to fall against the wall of power that is Grotle, who stands as the ultimate testament to his ideology. As this happens, Reggie once again has his eyes torn away from the action, as suddenly, Ash's egg begins glowing brightly, seemingly in response to the adversity Ash is going through, and the intensity of the battle, with it being abundantly obvious that it will hatch any minute now. Nonetheless, Reggie does not say a word, knowing better than to interrupt a battle like this, even for such a momentous occasion. Meanwhile, time seems to slow for Ash, as he suddenly feels exactly what Piplup is feeling. Though, more than that, he feels like he can sense and recognize more things about Paul and Grotle than he ever could before. The same is true for Reggie and Aaron as well, and even some of the bug types around the forest. He can feel their aura like Riley theorized, and though he has absolutely no idea what to do with this new sensation and the information it conveys, he does know how to keep following his gut, and so orders Piplup to change course and charge into the counter snare instead of dodging the attacks. Having total faith in its trainer, Piplup does this without hesitation, and is rewarded by avoiding the volley of razor leaves thanks to the immediate and illogical change of direction. Undaunted, Paul orders Groddle to charge in and use the Bite-Absorb combo anyway to follow through on their technique. However, drawing on both Piplup and Groddle's auras from the moment before they make contact, Ash is able to find an impossible opening, one made for only an attosecond at most, which could not be carried out with complete trust between trainer and Pokemon, as in this moment Ash calls for a peck to counter so precisely yet so fiercely that something new is born. A move special to Ash that intercepts and negates the attack of the opponent, whilst creating a chance for an immediate consecutive attack. This technique, even if he doesn't know it yet, is Ash's repel counter, and with it, Piplup is given an opening to unleash an extremely powerful salvo of pecks, as its beak begins to glow and extend from the extra power in the mastered move, with this being so strong it blows Groddle back onto its hind legs and exposes its underbelly. Shocked by this new technique, Paul resorts to old moves, going for another Toxic, and telling his massive Terrapod to squish the tiny bird. But miraculously, Piplup is able to duck under the glob of gunk, and at Ash's order, lands another repel counter, and then another after that. The consecutive use allowing Piplup to push its peck attack to a new level, as its beak gains a dangerous spin that adds extra power to the attack, whilst the competing counter techniques blow the two opposing Pokemon to either side of the field. In the aftermath of this, both are left winded, and fairly obviously on their last legs, as a green and blue aura begin to coat and exude from their bodies respectively, signaling the activation of Overgrown Torrent. Whether because Ash senses Paul's final attack, or simply knows him well enough to choose the perfect counter move, the two brothers decide to end the battle with everything they have, as Razor Leaf and Bubble Beam are fired at full power. Meeting in the middle, they quickly explode, and cause a short rain shower that soaks the two trainers, as a smoke cloud settles over their starters, obscuring the outcome of this final clash. Neither Ash nor Paul speak or move in that moment, both transfixed, with it falling to Aaron and his helpful Beautifly to clear away the smoke, revealing this match to have ended in a tie, as both Piplup and Groddle lie unconscious on their backs. As expected, Paul is livid at this outcome, as in his eyes it's a win for Ash, with him storming away without acknowledging Aaron, Ash, or Reggie, with the latter hoping he's at least going back to the Pokemon Center to get his team healed. Ash meanwhile feels a bit sobered, but in the end optimistic about this outcome, and so runs over to his elder brother, finding him not alone, as now a small Riolu stands where his egg was. Due to still being rather wrapped up in the events of the battle and worry over Paul, Ash doesn't immediately put two and two together, as he studies the curiously staring baby Pokemon, asking who this is and where his egg has gone in a slight tone of panic which the blue Pokemon cutely mimics, while Aaron comes over to join them. This reaction grants Reggie a much needed laugh, as he reveals the seemingly obvious, with Ash adopting an expression of realization and then pure joy, as he suddenly picks up Riolu and begins spinning around playfully, in celebration of it hatching after having waited so long. This sight causes Reggie's heart to swell with pride in Ash, not just for standing up to and beside Paul while he's going through this hard time so maturely, but also for achieving the fundamental task of truly raising a Pokemon from the very beginning of its life. He only hopes this battle serves as a turning point for the technical middle child of the family, since after seeing how he battled out there, Reggie is more worried for Paul than ever. Even so, there is more business to attend to while Ash and Riolu have their tender moment, with Reggie informing him that before he officially catches it, he'll need to leave one of his Pokemon with him if he's going to take Riolu, which is a newly hatched Pokemon with an already strong bond to him, he would highly suggest. Truthfully, Ash doesn't want to say goodbye to any of his friends, even temporarily, but understanding the truth of his big brother's words, listens when Reggie suggests Luxray, since it could be useful for his work as a breeder if it were to take some time off. Not to mention it's undeniably Ash's most developed Pokemon, since Staraptor has only just evolved, and would definitely appreciate mastering its final form alongside Ash, while he and Graveler still have work to do from what he said during the battle. As for Piplup, considering it is his starter, he doubts Ash would want to part with it, while Ponyta is a young Pokemon, making it unwise to send it away, as it could have profound negative developmental impacts. This just leaves Luxray and Elekid, the latter of whom is the most recent team addition, meaning its bond with Ash could stand the most amount of development, though it seemed to sync up extremely well during the match with Chimchar, even if it evidently didn't like sitting out for the rest of the match. This would also remove a direct type overlap in Ash's team, so in the end, it's the most logical choice as Paul would say. Valuing Reggie's opinion and experience as a trainer, Ash thanks him for his sage advice, agreeing to transfer Luxray to his care for the time being, with this being all the breeder needs to hear, as he takes the Lightning Lynx's ball and hands Ash an empty one, with which he can catch Riolu. When this is done, Reggie then departs, stating his intent to head back to Veilstone, while Aaron sticks around to thank Ash for championing the truth of their way, to which Ash just says that he hopes Paul sees that now. Factually, Aaron states that from his experience, people like them are more hard-headed than a Metapod, but they can grow and evolve given enough time, and especially patience, so he encourages Ash to keep trying to get through to Paul, something the boy vows that he certainly will. This earns him a smile from the bug specialist, as he states that he truly looks forward to battling Ash someday, before he and Beautifly make their way deeper into the clearing, determined to mend some of the damage the battle did before they leave. Taking this as his cue to go, Ash then heads to the Pokemon Center, only to find no trace of Paul, and so after giving his Mons over to be healed, he begins to look around, but this ultimately turns up nothing, with no one having seen him brooding, heard him griping, or even battled him in order for him to let off some steam. Definitely worried now, the purple-haired boy expands his search into town, though this too is a fruitless effort, with him reluctantly returning to the center when night falls. As a result, Ash quickly finds himself indulging in Paul's favorite pastime, brooding, as he stares balefully at his burger and fries alongside Riolu while the rest of his team are receiving treatment. Wanting to check in on them, he makes his way over to Nurse Joy's station, where he is informed they will need to remain in care overnight. Feeling this way on him too, Ash decides to change the subject, asking the nurse if she's perchance seen his brother, with it coming as something of a surprise that she reveals that she has. Urgently, Ash asks where he can find Paul, but this just earns him a sigh, as Joy states that he said he was heading out of town, even though she'd begged him to stay so she could treat his Pokemon. This causes Ash's blood to run cold, as he asks if that means what he thinks it does, to which Joy simply nods. Paul is out there alone, with only a team of injured and exhausted Pokemon. And that's where we'll leave things. Where is Paul heading off to in such a hurry? Will Ash be able to reach him before something bad happens? And can the brothers ever bridge the gap their battle has only seemed to widen? Find out as the journey continues.